Earworm.
Just
Earworm.
don't say what it is, because I don't want it to be flagged.
Oh.
What?
Oh, what? The piece of music?
Yeah.
What? Who?
No,
wrote
not
it?
who made it, but what it is. What do you think, Tom? You think that would be an issue?
I thought it was Andrew Allen.
It is, but
We have permission.
Yeah, but like,
and we actually should say what it is so that we like credit the guy.
No, not. I'm not saying we don't credit Andrew.
How would it be flagged?
Well, things get flagged on YouTube for who knows what
For
reason.
being there, usually, yeah.
Will of a watch time, 4:28 Eastern Standard Time.
Do you know what it is, Glenn?
Oh,
I see what you're thinking.
Yeah,
I'm
gotcha.
saying the name of it won't get us.
No. You can't tell. You can't tell.
You can.
As long as Andrew doesn't have a content ID bot out there.
No, that is such. That's like a cover tune, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
But it's not a direct cover, right? So
It's a performance. And I'm sure Andrew, stop playing it, Roger. Stop playing.
Oh, that's all right. Sorry.
Bull of a watch time, 4:28.
Sorry.
All right. Are you guys ready to do the first DTNS roundtable show?
Yeah, I am.
I want Guinevere's Garden Delight.
You're gonna be disappointed.
Is that part of the garden report?
No one gets it at all, except for the two old guys.
All right.
I didn't get it, but I bet it was funny.
Roundtable pizza. That's one of the items. Guinevere's Garden Delight.
Wait, Guinevere is a roundtable pizza type?
Yeah, it's one of the things you get. It's like an all vegetarian pizza.
Oh, it's a vegetarian. Didn't know that. And I used to eat at round table all the time as a kid. Maybe it's new. Maybe
All right. Here we go. 3, 2.
The Daily Tech News Show is powered by its listeners, not outside organizations. If you get value from the show, consider giving a little back. As little as $1 a month keeps great tech news and analysis coming your way commercial-free. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News Roundtable Show for Friday, October 27th, 2017 from DTNS headquarters in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline at Venice Beach, I'm Sarah Lane.
And from Pikachu Studios in the San Francisco Bay Area, I am Shannon Morse.
And joining us to fill out the roundtable, we're very excited to have staff reporter from CNET, Erin Carson, back on the show. How's it going, Erin?
It's great. Thanks so much for having me.
It's going to be fun. We've got a brand new format for the final Friday of each month. It's going to be a roundtable. I will tell you a little bit more about that. But to keep the change from being too shocking, we are still having Len Peralta here to illustrate the episode on Fridays. Len, how's it going?
Good. I am completely shocked. No, it's actually, I'm very excited to be on.
You're like, wait, I have to draw what?
It's going to be exciting. There are, I'll let you get to it, but I'm excited to what I'm going to do here. A little bit different than what I usually do on Fridays, but it's going to be exciting.
Producer Roger Chang is alongside as well. How are you, Roger?
I am hot, but I am good.
Good. We'll try to, it's a longer show than usual because it's a round table. I was about to say.
And I will be sponsoring in about 30 minutes.
All right. So what's the deal? On the last Friday of every month, we will do a roundtable episode like this one. We will take on 4 broader topics, generally drawn from the kind of stories we've been covering all month. So we're expanding on everything, trying to get a little more into what our opinions are about it, a little more understanding about it. And one of those topics will be picked by folks at the advisor level. So if you missed it this time, I apologize, but advisors, keep an eye on patreon.com/DTNS for a poll. And I think for this coming month, now that you get an idea of what the show's about, a way to suggest topics that will go into those polls. Instead of the half hour, Sarah and I and our co-contributors will cover these 15-minute long discussions. So we're going to try to fit these 4 discussions into an hour. They may not go 15 minutes, but we're going to try to put a 15-minute time limit on each discussion. I'm very excited to try this. We want your feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Sarah, are you ready to kick us off?
I am. Okay, so the first topic that we have, our first 15-minute topic, is the idea of automation and AI automation specifically, and the idea that humans are a little bit wary of robots taking jobs and stuff like that. So I'm going to read an email from Dan, who emailed us. He says he's from no longer warm Michigan. Sorry about that, Dan. And he said he references a recent show where Scott made excellent points about automation and the rise of electronic spreadsheets, creating more jobs and less drudge work for accountants. And there are several examples of this dynamic where the industry is improved by the automation. Where it falls down is industries where the automation or robots complete all of the work. Those accountants were able to take the much more organized and granular info, better serve their clients with more informed analysis and recommendations. But in the auto industry, if the robot builds the car's done. The end. It's nothing for a human to do. If the coal mining robot handles all the tasks relevant to getting the coal out of the ground, it's done. There's nothing for a human to do. If each of them then load their products onto self-driving trucks, say, it gets delivered. Nothing for a human to do. People are certainly freed up, but for what? That's what Dan is asking. The job is done. Those are the industries where there will be some of the strongest trauma. Now, there is a really interesting article on Forbes that ties nicely into this. The name of the article, or I'm sorry, it's a Wired article, is titled 5 Myths About AI That You Must Stop Believing. And one of the takeaways that I found from the article that was really interesting was the notion that people say, well, it's the low-skilled, the manual workers, those are the jobs that are most at risk. And they're going to be replaced and it's going to be a problem. The author of this article on Wired says, no, that's not true. I mean, just look at doctors and lawyers using AI to scan thousands of documents better, right? Or to use machine learning algorithms to process x-rays with superior precision to the human eye. Both of those jobs still require a human touch, though. If you're a lawyer, you're a litigator, let's say, you still have to convince a jury that your data makes sense. That's a human thing. If you're a doctor, you still might have to talk to a patient about a medical issue. Well, that's a human thing. So I guess I wanted to open it up to the group. What's everybody's kind of like scare level of jobs being replaced by robots, and do those people get freed up to do better jobs as a result?
That's kind of an argument that I made previously when we were talking about automation on Daily Tech News Show, and it's the fact that while a lot of these jobs will be replaced by automation, not all of them, obviously, but some of the more repetitive tasks and things like that, the companies that are hiring these people will need to find a way to give them better jobs, just like you said, Sarah. And a lot of that comes down to finding those like human emotional aspects of the job, like marketing and PR and getting out and talking to customers and fixing problems, like those kind of things people appreciate when you have that emotional connection with somebody else. And I don't think they would get that out of a robot, but it really comes down to the company. Like, how are they going to implement those kind of emotional relationships with their customers so that their entire job market isn't being replaced by robots?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an interesting area. I think that you run into these two kind of schools of thought. And one is that the folks who lose their jobs are going to be retrained to create or manage the robots, or we're going to just have like so much nice leisure time to write that great American novel and whatnot. Nothing's ever that simple. I think that you can look back historically and see these inflection points where economic growth and productivity ended up sort of like this gap, and tech came in and simultaneously destroyed and created jobs. So I never advise panic, but I think it's definitely societally something to prepare for.
Mm-hmm. I think so too, because, like you guys have said, we used to have ditch diggers, and then big machines came along that could dig ditches. It had put all the ditch diggers out of work, and we had an entire industrial revolution that did similar things. But we found new things for people to do, things we couldn't afford to pay people to do before because we had to pay them to be ditch diggers and stuff like that. So I'm not too worried about that. But your last point is the most salient one to me, Erin, which is there is displacement. And so while I am very positive about the ultimate outcome of all of this, I don't think jobs disappear. We come up with new things that we can do for each other with value. Well, wealth isn't like just a thing that goes away. It's like, oh, well, I've got extra money now that I used to have to pay for this. Now I can actually do something else that I never could afford to do as a business. What happens to those people who were really good at getting the coal out of the ground, or who were really good at building the cars or supervising the robots that were building the cars that don't need to be supervised, and they don't have an immediate job that they can move to?
I think one of the things that I always find most interesting about the argument that, well, if a computer takes a human's job, then the human is screwed, is that it's as if the human was only made to do this one task, right? As if people are defined by some role that they had to do just because there weren't machines back in the day. So using coal mining as an example, it's like, it's really dangerous. People die doing that. So if a robot can do that, allowing somebody who's worked in mining for many years to do something different, well, sure, we have to define what that different thing is, but it's certainly not, the end of that human's potential, that particular job went away. There are always other options.
I mean,
there was a study that came out, I think in 2013 from Oxford that freaked a lot of people out. And it said that somewhere around 47% of jobs in the US were at risk of being replaced by automation. And I think that the point that got lost a little in there was that wasn't a final sweeping death notice. There's a lot of room for subtle change, nuance in there. So
yeah, and getting rid of jobs that, again, we can actually use that labor better if we don't have to have humans doing it. And I keep bringing up ditch digging, I know, which is horrible, but it is kind of the prototype of like, nobody wants to do it. Okay, there's probably one of you out there's like, I really enjoy digging a ditch.
It's therapeutic. Good exercise.
Getting in there and being close to the earth. That's fine. But most people didn't. And we were wasting people's hours because we had to have them do that for various reasons. And now we don't. And so we found better uses for people's time, which actually is why we have a higher standard of living on average than any other era in human history. When you back up far enough, doesn't mean all our problems are solved though.
Well, and I think one of the bigger issues is that there needs to be a proactive approach to essentially what you need to do is shifting people out of a manual labor, but skilled manual labor position that might be automated into a new work situation. Because what I think a lot of people talk about, but don't really put their thumb on, is that they're talking about the social cost of that period in between the transition, right? If you are a family that's living on two working class incomes, one of them goes away, suddenly that family, even if it's only for 5 or 6 years, you're going to have an incredible reduction in income coming into the family. And people are like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to feed? I'm going to pay the mortgage. I'm going to do all these things. And so I think it really is predicated not just on industry, but also government, as well as communities, to kind of start thinking about like, so what can we do? What are the ways?
I think you make a really good point, Roger, that it's easy to say, but wait, you weren't really enjoying this menial task that a robot can do now. And so now you're just freed up to do better things. Well, that's not really the way it works for a lot of people, especially people who are, in low income situations, supporting families. You can't just like figure out what your dream job is instead and do that tomorrow. That's not really the way that the workforce is set up, certainly not in the US. So it's more complicated than saying, robots have made it better for all of us. We could just do better stuff, that we as smart humans were meant to do anyway. There are two sides to this.
I think about when I was back in high school and I was working at a Domino's Pizza of all places. And considering that kind of job, that service industry job, like that could have been automated. Everything from making the pizza to getting the shipment delivered to a person's door to accepting the payment and even them putting in the order. I mean, they already do that on mobile. You can just set up an order online now and it gets sent over to the pizza place. If I was replaced by a robot at that time, I would have been devastated because I was so young. I wasn't trained in anything else, and I wouldn't have known what I could do. That dream job had not come to me while I was in high school. And even just last night, I went to the Metreon and I saw this cafe it was a cafe in the Metreon that was completely robotic. But the interesting thing to me was you had two guys there that were employed by the company that had put in place the cafe, and they were teaching people how to use it. So their entire job that night was showing people, like kind of coaxing them to come over and introducing them to the concept and teaching people how to use this robotic cafe. So there is still a place for people to work with robots. You're not necessarily going to be completely replaced, but it's going to be really hard to find that place for humans, especially if you're young and you're just getting into the workforce and you don't really know what your place is in the workforce yet.
Well, it's even worse if you're older. I mean, if you're in your 50s and you're ending toward you're coming to your retirement age or your pension age, I mean, you've built up a lifetime of skill and knowledge in a particular field. You can say, yeah, you can jump ship and move to other stuff, but again, it's not that simple. I mean, you know, people aren't fungible in the way that the way that people think that machines are, right? I can move machine A to point B and it'll be fine. People, especially if they are highly skilled, you know, you need to find things that dovetail or at least are tangentially related. If you're a mechanic, maybe you could work on machinery like, you know, diesel engines that might be, you know, part of a power plant. You can move into that. If you're a cook, you can maybe move into other food service areas, but you're not going to put a cook fixing a diesel engine or a, you know, guy who was mining coal straight into coding. That is a possibility, but that isn't something that's going to happen within a 3 to 4 year period and they come out with a good paying job. It's probably going to be more like, you know, an 8 to 10 year process to shift some of these people over. And I think it's not to say it's impossible, but it's something that needs to be thought of like right now with plans in place on how to do that.
Be proactive about it. People should cross-train. Businesses should cross-train all their employees so that they are ready for that.
Coal mining is a great example. I'm based in Kentucky, kind of the mid-ish part of the state, but you see a lot of stories kind of coming out of the eastern portion of the state where there's been a lot of tumult in the industry over the years, and there are efforts, like Roger mentioned, to say retrain former coal workers to do things like coding. But another part of the issue is if you are, say, from a small town and your family has been there for multiple generations and your job leaves, sure, there's remote work, but you are somewhat bound by location. Yeah. So again, it's just kind of like another layer of not only can you acquire the skill, but what is your access to the job market?
No, it makes me think of Northern Bond County, Illinois, Sereno, Coffeen. That's a lot of people working in the coal industry, at least when I was growing up. And there's a story in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch today that the city of St. Louis has voted to eliminate its dependence on coal power by, I think, 2035. And St. Louis is the seat of Peabody Coal and a couple other of these big coal companies. If I'm sitting over there in Coffeen and I still have a job in coal, that sends tremors through. So, that music you're hearing is letting us know that we've hit our 15-minute mark. Big thanks to Andrew Allen for letting us use his wonderful jazz to give us a gentle way to say, Tom, shut up, and move to the next topic. All right, so let's go on to talk about a topic that Shannon suggested we mention, based on the fact that Amazon had the key announcement earlier this week. If you missed that, it's the one where Amazon will sell you a door lock and a camera, and if you sign up with Amazon Prime, Amazon delivery people can open your door when you're not there and put your package inside. There were also great Amazon earnings numbers yesterday. Amazon's just killing it now on making the money. And if you didn't realize it, Amazon and Apple are both among the largest companies by revenue and by market cap in the world. So there's a lot of tech companies that are top by market cap, but when you look at revenue, it's often oil industry, energy industry, financial industry, except Apple and Amazon. Amazon is up there in revenue. Amazon is also engaging, unlike Apple, in lots of different industries. You ever do those pull down surveys where they're like, which industry are you in? Is it industrial or education or services? Amazon's in almost all of those. They're in logistics and shipping on the back end, not just the delivery driver that comes to your house, but planes, boats. They're into entertainment. Obviously, they have Amazon Studios. They're making movies. They're making TV shows. They're in finance. Did you know that Amazon has a small business lending arm? They are doing some kinds of banking. They are doing advertising. It was one of their biggest revenue drivers this last quarter. And they're doing pharmaceuticals. St. Louis Post-Dispatch, again, shout out to my hometown newspaper, reports that Amazon has received licenses for wholesale prescription drug distribution in 12 states. They would just need to obtain a pharmacy license by the end of the year in order to sell drugs directly to customers. So, Shannon, which scares you more? Amazon Key and strangers coming into your house, or Amazon just running everything in the world?
Well, I'm not too worried about Amazon running everything in the world, as you say, Tom, because a lot of companies are doing exactly this same thing, not just Amazon. Apple started out with old computers, and then they got into the music industry, and now they do a lot of financial stuff, so you can cross payments through Apple. So there's a lot of different companies doing that. So is Google. Google introduced hardware in their phones, which of course everybody is a little ticked off about the new Pixel, but they also have a lot of different hands in different places. So I'm not too worried about that. What I am worried about from a personal privacy and security feel, obviously, is Amazon Key and the cloud camera, which I will preface this by saying I did purchase a cloud camera just so I can test it and see how much information is leaking.
That's good. I'm glad you did that, because I didn't buy one because I have 2 dogs and I don't want to have to just deal with that at all. They're going to be around when I'm not, and they're going to be at the door. So that just doesn't work for me. But I am curious how secure that is. They're doing a lot to keep it secure by saying, look, you have a camera on it. Is it properly encrypted though? How hackable is the lock versus any other lock? Any lock's hackable, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
So you're going to put it through its paces.
Yeah, well, there's been several studies at DEF CON and other hacker conventions that have put all these different popular locks through all the different tests, and they found most of them were vulnerable at the time. Now, obviously, with those different locks, you do get software updates for most of them, but it's another IoT device. Is it going to be completely secure? Probably not. And that is why I still have an old school, regular key on my front door and my back door, and I will probably never replace it because I don't want to end up in that vulnerability. But with the cloud camera plus the key, my concern here is that Amazon is controlling not only the security of your household that you view, but also the security of your front door. And they're also in charge of the delivery. Currently, they're saying that Amazon is only trusting its own delivery team to handle these deliveries of packages to your front door, to get them to actually open up the front door and put down your package. So they're running all parts of that entire thing. I feel like it's kind of monopolizing the whole security of your household. Instead, I would feel a lot more secure if I had a separate company running the camera and then had Amazon entering the door and dropping off my package, so that I know, if my camera mysteriously went down while the package was supposed to be delivered, and I have no way of knowing if they actually delivered the package, then I would have that proof, because I would have a third party running that camera instead of Amazon.
Need a camera on the camera.
Yeah, there you go.
Camera.
That's exactly what I would want.
Well, and you're right. Alphabet is obviously in a lot of different industries beyond just Google, and Google's in a lot of different industries. I think there is something different shaping up with Amazon, though. I don't see Apple, Alphabet, or Microsoft, or Facebook even buying the ships, or even leasing the airlines that deliver packages. I don't see them getting their arms in as many different industries. Amazon starting to look like Standard Oil to me, where they just own everything. It's not just you started to hit on it, right? They own the pharmaceuticals and the Whole Foods that your stuff is coming from, and they own the delivery truck, and they own the door lock on your house. But they own the bank, maybe that the small business got the loan to be able to sell you the product and make it in the first place. Erin, I'm curious, does this pervasiveness of Amazon raise any alarm bells with you?
I mean, to me, I think one of the kind of interesting aspects is when you do pause and step back and realize all the different directions that Amazon is gaining ground and presence. So yeah, I mean, in some ways, I'm kind of more so inclined to just like sit for a second, kind of decide where I think that's going. But something that I saw this morning that was kind of interesting from Reuters is they had a point. I mean, just to kind of speak to some of the breadth of Amazon and similar companies, is they were talking about how Amazon, Microsoft, Intel, and Alphabet generated about 2% of the U.S.'s national output, which is about like $100 billion just in the September quarter. So it's, I think, definitely something to keep an eye on, just the extent to which these companies can expand.
I think Tom and Justin Robert Young and I yesterday on DTNS, we were covering a bunch of earnings reports, and Amazon was part of that. And an interesting takeaway to me was that because of the Whole Foods acquisition and just growth in general, Amazon now has 540,000 employees, which is almost 7 times how many employees Google has. Google's a pretty big company. 4 times that of Microsoft, and is the second largest US employer now after Walmart. And we also kind of made the joke that it used to be about, well, Amazon's putting a mom and pop bookstore out of business. And now it's like, well, now we're looking at something like a Walmart, right?
Yeah.
That
Well,
Amazon is creeping towards.
Rich Straffolito at our Slack pointed out that Amazon Web Services is doing the equivalent of putting out mom and pop businesses by outcompeting smaller cloud service companies.
That too. Shannon, I think you make really good points about feeling really uncomfortable with the idea of Amazon controlling security and delivery and so many things that seem so convenient on the surface. At the same time, Amazon does a lot of stuff really well. And I think that the company, at least at this point, has proven it is particularly nimble to move into a lot of different areas of the market that we didn't even necessarily expect before. And, in that sense, I gotta give him some props. But I do still sort of wonder, okay, well, if Amazon takes over my grocery store and Amazon takes over this and that, and that's where I'm getting everything from, it's almost like I still have like impulse buy purchase fun that doesn't happen with Amazon. Like I can't recreate that feeling of like going into a store and like picking up a pair of shoes, whatever. I could buy it on Amazon maybe for a little bit cheaper.
You just go into the Amazon bookstore and then there's whole shelf of impulse buys that aren't even books.
Well, I know, but it's not the same.
They've got you covered.
It's not the same. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm saying it's different. And I'm not sure, what this is all going to look like in another 5 years.
Sarah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because one of the reasons why I'm not super concerned about Amazon is because you're right. They do so many different things so very well, and they've continued to grow the business. And while I know that going into these different things like pharmaceuticals and finances, everything is about making money for this business, obviously, but they're so customer relatable. They've done an excellent job with that kind of stuff. Just the other day when I had a package that was never delivered to my door, Amazon immediately refunded me. They didn't even need proof or anything like that. They just refunded
we got
me.
so much cash.
Yeah, they were just like, it's all good. We'll credit your account. And I was like, cool, that's good customer service. Like, that's what it should be like. When you come to something like the key, while I understand that Amazon is doing these things very well, they're working with third parties for these front door locks. And I don't know how those third parties are securing my stuff. So I understand that, I trust them with a lot of what I do in my life. I don't know if I trust the third parties that they're working with. So maybe they're doing this all like taking control of like the logistics and shipping and everything like that for a liability reason, because if they're in charge of it, they have less liability with these third-party companies for losing packages and stuff like that. And in that case, it could save them a lot of money if they're the ones in charge of everything, because it's all in-house and they can train their people to do it correctly. They won't have to depend on a third party to deliver stuff. They won't have to deliver, or depending on a third party to do whatever it might be, app integration or whatever. So I can understand why they're making these moves, but they have to take it very gently and very gently strides to make sure that they're still friendly with their consumers and they don't grow to a point where we end up hating them.
Just wait till Amazon buys Yale or Kwikset. Then they'll own the lock maker. Yep. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you want a company to be good at the whole process and not have to rely on a third party, because even if both are great, Yale knows locks. They've been making locks forever. I'm sure they're very good. But whenever you have two companies, there's always a little chink in the armor. There's always a little more room for miscommunication, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. So I understand why they want to take control of everything, but the moment it starts to feel like a monopoly is the moment that I start to worry. And currently I don't feel like that. And I think it's just because of that trust that Amazon has built with their customers for so long.
Yeah, the Verge had a brand awareness and a brand lovability, for lack of a better word, survey that they did with a company that came out today, and Amazon topped it. People were saying, I could live without Starbucks. I could live without Twitter. Those were down at the bottom of, could you live without it? Amazon was top of like, no, I could not live without Amazon.
Wow.
That's the thing, is you love them so much, you give them a little more of a pass. Like, okay, so I never spend my money anywhere but Amazon now, but they're so good and they're good with the customer service. Like, at what point does it become too much? At what point does it cross the line for you, even if they're really good at it?
It's a human bias, but at least we can recognize our own bias towards our favorite companies as compared to the ones that we're not recognizing as well.
I am definitely guilty of buying things on Amazon because it's Amazon, not caring that it's maybe a little more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Well, what? Because it's Amazon. What is that? What kind of things?
I could go down to the dog bakery here and get dog food, but sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I'll just go to Amazon and do it.
I
could buy a baseball hat from MLB.com, but I'll just do it on Amazon.
I am actually the opposite. And I know I'm a minority because I talk to people about this all the time. I complain like, my Amazon packages, if I'm not home, I got to sign for it. And then I got a UPS slip, and it's a whole hassle. I could just go to Bruno's, the independent pet store, and buy my stuff there. And then I have it within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I guess that's the end of that.
Yeah, that's the key, Sarah. We're on to the next story.
We were speaking of bias, so we're going to continue on that theme, but it's a different kind of bias. And Erin, I am so excited to get more insight from you, because I'm going to be quoting a lot of statistics from articles that you have actually written on CNET. But I'm just going to go through some of these data points first to get us all on the same page. And this is the idea of diversity, and particularly gender, in tech, and the disparity, and why there is disparity, and why we keep talking about it, and why we have to keep talking about it. So there was a report published in the Harvard Business Review earlier this week. It was data analysts from McKinsey & Co. and workplace analytics company Humanize. They issued 100 sociometric badges. It is like badges that people wore across 5 levels of seniority in a company, big company, large, mostly male though, a strategy firm. And they observed people for about 4 months. So the badges measured things like movement, proximity to other badges, as in people, volume of the tone of voice when someone was speaking to someone else, who talks to whom, and when and where people are talking to others, and who's doing most of the talking in a conversation. So it's, it's kind of getting a sense of like who's kind of in the, the driver's seat here. So the data was anonymized for everything besides gender, your role at the company, and then the time you've spent at the company. Have you been there for 5 years? Have you been there for 25? That sort of thing. And the findings show that actually, even though there's this ongoing conversation that, well, men and women are different, and we're just never going to really get on the same page in that way because men and women are different. Well, in these findings, men and women behaved quite similarly, at least in the business context. And the conclusion of this research report was, and I quote, our analysis suggests that the difference in promotion rates was due not to behavior, but to how they were treated. This indicates the arguments about changing women's behavior to lean in, for example, COO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, very famous for that, might miss the bigger picture, and that's that gender equality is due to bias, not differences in behavior after all. Erin, I want to kind of hand it over to you at this point because I know that you think about this a lot and you spend a lot of time reporting on some of these findings. It tends to make sense to me.
Yeah, and so I think the big reason that a study like this matters is because we're at a point in time where a lot of very large, important tech companies are very outspoken and public about their diversity initiatives. They have training classes and partnerships and, spreadsheets and all kinds of things going on. But the fact is, with all of these efforts, we still don't really know what works. And so, for example, if you're sinking a lot of time and money and resources into, as the study mentioned, trying to fix the women or, rolling out various initiatives, it could all be for naught. We don't know this yet. If there's still this sort of like huge undercurrent of bias, it might not matter if we teach women to have, better leadership skills. So it's worth noting something like this so that we don't end up wasting a lot of time and money trying to fix the problem in a way that's really not doing any good.
Well, it also, it kind of opens up the conversation of, okay, well, if it's really about men and women behaving differently and women need to lean in, to use a popular phrase, if we are encouraging women to behave differently in order to get farther ahead in the workplace and be on a level playing field, well, if men and women aren't behaving that differently to begin with, it's as if we're encouraging women to act outside their comfort zone, but for what? If it's a bias thing, I mean, that's a huge problem, and it's not an easy solution. Certainly not something that we're going to answer in the next 10 minutes. But that's really interesting to me. If there's inherent bias already, then we shouldn't be teaching anyone to be anything but who they are anyway. And there's really no evidence, at least from this report, to suggest that women are holding back.
Right, exactly. And that was, something really interesting because at this point in time, something you hear a lot is that, maybe, women are maybe more quiet or they're not sort of intentional enough about speaking with their managers or all these different, sorts of potential pitfalls. But it was fascinating. I mean, they actually put sensors on people and were able to determine, like, it's not that the women at this company were not getting that face time or approaching their work any differently. So it really kind of rules out that side of things.
I have a personal anecdote I could include here, and it kind of goes along with this study too. I did a panel back in May at a security convention called AUSCERT down in Australia, and the panel was about women in tech, women in InfoSec, and how diversity is currently like changing a little bit, but we're still running into a lot of those problems. And one of the people on the panel was a transgender woman who had the same job for years. She still does. And during her transition, she noticed that when she went from, male gender to female gender, she noticed a complete bias switch, like a 360 from her coworkers, where like they would talk over her in meetings and stuff like that. And before her transition, they didn't do that to her. And I thought it was amazing that somebody who has had the same job for all these years was completely treated differently after a transition in her gender. It was just nuts. And it speaks volumes when you look at somebody who's done a huge study like this company has, with 100 different badges that kind of goes along with that same trade.
There's another study that really ties into this called Women in the Workplace 2017. And this was also a report from McKinsey & Co., but also in conjunction with leanin.org, which of course is the nonprofit founded by Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook COO, about the idea of women in technology and companies in general. This particular research study spoke with 70,000 workers from 222 companies that employ more than 12 million people. So big companies, huge companies, men and women. And there were some interesting findings that I want to mention here. One of them was women have earned more college degrees than men for the last 3 decades, just, on the whole, but still are underrepresented. Well, if you just kind of look at numbers at face value, that doesn't really make any sense, right? Probably something else going on here. And also that 50% of the men at these organizations, these big companies in the study, thought that 10% of a company's senior leadership, well, that was an adequate representation for women. Well, 10%, that's not 50, that's 10. So I think that, I don't want to sit here and say, well, men just don't want women in positions of power. I think that it's happening slowly, but it's still a very clear issue of women being underrepresented and men not necessarily saying, this seems kind of unfair. It's happening slowly, but it's not, we're not 50-50, it really isn't a fair fight. And the sooner we all get on the same page about that, the sooner we all get a little bit smarter.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One of the things that makes this whole issue very challenging is that if you don't really believe that a problem exists, you can't take it seriously and start to address it. So the idea that there exists this massive blind spot, there's a lot of folks who, because they maybe feel that they have not personally witnessed it or whatever the case is, don't really buy into the idea that there is bias in the workplace. That's a huge thing to have to get over. That's really something that, like a bridge that we have to cross, that's going to make it very difficult to sort of have more earnest conversations and kind of push things forward. And, these diversity reports from companies come out every year. We've seen them since about 14 or so. And the change is so gradual. I think it kind of speaks to the idea that it's not one thing. There's a lot going on, and it is complicated.
Allison Didisco-Rayom over at Tech Republic has done some similar reporting. And one of the things she noted was that CS majors at the entry level are often 50-50, women and men. CS graduates, though, dip down below 30%. And why is that? And one of the theories is that as women move through the course system, they confront more male teachers and feel like there's less in common, they're less understood, they express less confidence, even though they're often getting better grades. And so you'd move on too if you're like, I don't really get these people. I'm going to try something else. And I think that happens in the workplace too, where we all like to work with people that are similar to us. He gets me. He's funny. They understand our culture. And males often have more in common with other males than they do with other females. And I think some of this is as simple as that. And it takes people who are in the hiring positions to have some self-awareness to say, let me force myself to look at the people that I'm interviewing beyond what I have in common with them. let me force myself to challenge my own perspectives and look to hire people that challenge my own perspectives and are still qualified to do the job. And I think it's really interesting that I don't think it's bad to teach anyone to lean in and have leadership strategies, but maybe that's not the solution to the problem. And I have a personal anecdote too. In, I don't remember, 2010, 2011, we knew Becky Worley was going to leave Tech News Today. And I'm sitting there talking to Sarah about how, gosh, you know, I'd really like a host for the show who was a woman. And Sarah's looking at me like, I'm right here. I'm right here in front of you, Tom.
And Tom, you weren't the first person to do this to me. So it's like it wasn't even unique to that
it was a watershed moment, because it hit me and I'm like, oh, I didn't think you were interested. And which is what I said. But then I started to think about it later. I'm like, why? Why didn't I think she was interested? There's no reason that she was hosting 2 days of the show already. And it was just not a bias that I had conscious. Wasn't a bias that was even necessarily because I thought men and women were different. It was just something that I was not aware of. And as soon as I got rid of it.
Also, you know, on the flip side of that, Tom, and I kind of remember this actually, even though it was, 7 years ago now, it's like at the same time, did I speak up enough, in hindsight for what I actually wanted? Maybe I didn't. Now, I'm not saying that the problem is that women don't speak up enough, because I know that's not a problem that everybody has, and I don't want to generalize based on somebody's gender, but I know in my experience, there have been times where I've held back, and it's not necessarily just because I'm talking to a male at that particular moment, but there are behaviors that I've certainly exhibited, I've noticed in others, and I think that it ties into this just overall general concept that we talk about bias and assuming things about what people want and don't want, and it's just not a black and white conversation when it comes to gender. Now, I mean, I guess this sort of segues a little bit into, I think we'd be remiss to talk about diversity in the workplace just as a gender issue, because certainly it isn't. It's also absolutely a race issue. There was a report that I read this morning as we were getting ready for this about the idea that tech leadership has a bigger race than gender problem, right? So they're not always mutually exclusive, but let's put them into two buckets for the sake of argument here. And this report found that Asians, and especially Asian women, are among the least likely to be promoted into leadership positions. So the study was presented by Ascend Leadership, which is a nonprofit group for Asian professionals. It was a huge amount of employees, almost 200,000 of them, almost 70,000 managers, executives. Information was collected by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So it is a really legit set of data. This is between 2007 and 2015. And these were technology companies based in San Francisco and San Jose. That's, the Silicon Valley belt, if you will. And it covers Apple and Facebook and Cisco and Twitter and all the big guys. Representation of white women in leadership, I am one of them, rose 17% between 2007 and 2015. All other minority groups lost ground, though. So in a sense, well, okay, if some women are figuring out how to succeed and things are going well for us, that's wonderful. But it's not across the board when you're just talking about males versus females. There's a 13% decline from 2007 to 2015 in the number of Black women who even entered the tech workforce at all. And when you look at the number of Hispanic women, it declined slightly as well, but they, as a group, Hispanic women had the worst leadership representation after Asian women. So again, this is not something that we can solve based on, well, if we just treat women better in the workplace, then everybody wins. It's a lot more nuanced.
No, and you shouldn't treat women like special either in that case. I think everybody should be treated fairly. Just wanted to add that on.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. We're not saying unqualified people should be put in just to make a point, but you've got qualified people out there. I mean, that was what Allison Denisko's research shows.
Yeah, it's
All
about
right.
a fair shot.
What's that?
It's about a fair shot for everybody.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. All right, let's go into our final topic. This was the one chosen by our advisors. If you're at the advisor level on Patreon, you get a chance to pick one of the topics. This month it was by a vote. We'll try different ways of doing it. The vote winner was artificial intelligence hype versus reality. And I know this has come up a couple of times on the show where various people have said, yeah, everybody just slaps AI on stuff, which the first time I heard someone say that kind of threw me, because to me, as I cover DeepMind and, autonomous cars and AlphaGo, I think, wow, this, AI is real. There's real machine learning advancements coming, but it's true that on the other side of it, people will slap AI on something that is not AI. So I kind of broke it down into a few different usages of AI, because a lot of startups are claiming to do AI when they're using just rules-based automation. Now, arguably, some people say it's still a kind of an artificial intelligence, but AI doing the math faster isn't what I think of as artificial intelligence. That's Netflix predictions, where it's just like got an algorithm, or it's the Nest thermostat saying like, oh, we see a pattern of you putting it at 75 at this time of day, so we'll start doing that. AI doing more than math is machine learning. That's where the machine itself goes through the data and finds out how it should interpret it. It's not looking for a pattern that I told it to do. It's figuring out what patterns it should look at. You're still giving it the data. It's still supervised learning, but that's the kind of thing that's natural language processing. So again, some people say, well, Siri, Cortana, they're not really AI, but they are doing some machine learning there. It may not be full AI, but they're doing some natural language processing. AlphaGo, the AlphaGo that beat the Go master, was supervised learning. That was machine learning. It was trained on a bunch of Go games, so we had to tell it what to look at, but then it looked at all of them and figured out how to play Go better. Pattern recognition to aid and speed up medical diagnosis. There was an article today about a company called ZebraMed, I think, that is making a product for radiologists that can help scan MRIs and CT scans and more quickly detect certain items that it might take a long time or the diagnostician just might miss because we're human. That is a level of AI, and that's what I usually try to call machine learning. But then there's the highest level of AI, which is unsupervised learning, and that's where the AI teaches itself. And so far, the only real example that I've heard of that's credible is the AlphaGo, which was just given the rules of Go, wasn't given any data, wasn't given any example games, and learned how to play Go such that it could beat the AlphaGo that was a machine learning developed version of this. So thinking on that, like, okay, that's AI. That's where we are with AI. That's kind of what we have with AI. I'm curious how you guys feel. How far away are we? Where are we with AI? And what's the hype to reality percentage in your opinion? Shannon, I'll start with you.
You'll start with me. All right. I would say that we're starting to get there, but we really haven't like struck gold in the AI universe, if you want to say it that way. So far, like what I've seen as far as like smart homes, IoT devices, and things like that, they're all machine learning. Everything from your music players to your voice controlled devices like the Amazon Echo and stuff like that. All of that is machine learning. The only time that I have seen really, really awesome AI was Intel, which is working with a bunch of different car developers to learn what all these different things are on the road that you might see. So they're discovering what street signs are. If they've never seen the street sign before, though, they'll realize, oh, hey, that's a street sign because, this is what it looks like. They'll recognize people. Even if they've never seen a child before, they'll understand, like, oh, that's a person walking their dog, like a kid walking their dog, even though the only kind of person I've ever seen through this AI is an adult. So they're starting to understand it, but the definition of AI is so hard to understand from like a consumer perspective. Even I have a hard time understanding which ones are machine learning and which ones are AI, unless I'm able to like talk to a CTO of a company or something like that. So giving a good example of AI, I just haven't really seen anybody like turn this into a really good consumer technology that people can use day to day and really get used to it.
Yeah, maybe that we're not there yet. I wonder sometimes if AI isn't sort of in the 1960s mainframe era right now, where the big companies like the Googles and the Facebooks can do it, but they do it in a very centralized way, and it's not something that impacts most people's lives.
I guess my main question is, and I understand the differences, Tom, that you laid out between, what's artificial intelligence, what's automation, what's machine learning, is like, what does it really matter? I mean, who is sitting around being like, we need to define the AI on this particular, piece of software and make sure that we're labeling it correctly, or else mass hysteria will ensue. I guess if you were a company that was claiming, we're the AI leader, and an investor gave you money based on a claim that you couldn't actually back up, like, okay, there's some gray areas there where I understand, but generally, are people sitting around talking about like how to properly, put the right labels on some of this technology that's cropped up quite recently?
I don't know if it's that so much as people are just throwing around AI for their own products.
Yeah.
In places where
it's more of claiming something that may not actually be real.
Yeah,
I understand that.
Yeah, I think that can also kind of have like an impact on the broad perception of this. And I think you see something similar with virtual reality. If you're kind of average Joe thinks that AI is something that it's not, and their experience is not amazing, it's sort of, it has sort of an impact on what people want and what people will support and what people buy, and sort of, et cetera on out. But
yeah, you get sort of numb to the idea that AI is any good. If every time you go to your AI assistant, which isn't really AI, and say, and ask them a natural language question, and it's like, I don't know, let me look it up on the web. You're like, well, I could have done that. That's just voice recognition.
Yeah. When I set up my Sonos One speaker, which I've been, all excited about just because it's my first smart speaker that I've ever had in my house. Yesterday, my first question was, are my cats cute? And Alexa was like, no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, see?
Don't have eyes. Sorry.
You're not smart.
The smart answer, if anyone ever asks you that, is yes, your cats are cute.
Yes, your cats are cute. Like, you would think that, the speaker would be like, oh, she's, it's a pet thing, right?
Yeah,
so like, let's like give like a cutesy answer, and and the person asking the question would be like, you're so smart. But it's there's a long way to go. And again, I'm talking about a speaker that, it can learn your voice and knows your name, and there are certain things, but it's still pretty limited. It's not necessarily, on the same playing field as a computer game that can learn from itself to beat itself.
Yeah, and to Erin's point, I think that's the kind of thing people start to get less supportive of AI, not because they're afraid of it. That used to be the case, like, oh, AI, and we still obviously are having those conversations with Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking out there talking about it. We can argue whether that's a different kind of hype, actually. But I think a lot of people are starting to go, nah, AI is bunk, because everyone keeps promising me, oh, this is a smart assistant, and it's just not that smart. And so suddenly it becomes harder. I think it even creates a vicious cycle, because it becomes harder to convince someone that, like, no, we have a really valuable proposition here. And so companies tend to go even farther into making claims in order to convince you to try it out.
I think that's why you have companies like Google's Assistant. Whenever you get a new Google product, they tell you right off the bat, you should set up voice recognition so that over time it understands your voice. So it's telling you right off the bat, like, you are going to be training this through the machine that you're working with, through your assistant, to understand you fully in the future. I think companies should stop using the words AI, just because, if they use it too much, then we won't believe that it's an actual thing. We'll stop thinking that AI is ever going to happen, and more focus on like, hey, we need to train these products like Google is doing. So I appreciate how they're going towards it, because they haven't like gone out and said like, oh, this is AI, and just like straight up lied to us, because it's not. So there's too many companies out there. And it kind of reminds me of back in the day when we had CES. Well, CES happens every year, but back in the day when HD was first a thing and everybody was touting their thing as HD, but there's two different HDs. There's 1080p and then there's 720p. So you never really knew what you were getting. But once consumers kind of educated ourselves on the differences between the two resolutions, then we started seeing people market like, hey, this is 1080p full HD, or this is 720p HD. So we as consumers educated themselves, so did the companies as far as what they needed to market. And maybe that's the point that we need to get to, and we're pushing AI too much, and it's a little too soon for that.
AI is getting 4G'd.
Yeah.
Bankrupt.
AI retina display ish.
Exactly.
and that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to this at all, which is, well, what do we call AI then, right? If there's sort of like, I don't know, assisted rules-based automation, let's call it, and then there's machine learning. What's that unsupervised learning called if we bankrupt the term AI?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the conclusion that we're coming to in this conversation is that AI is too general. It's okay. We know what that means, sort of, in a all-encompassing sense, but there are different levels of it. It's like saying, like Shannon said, it's like saying HD or super powerful or robot, or there are lots of things that don't really mean anything. And when you're pushing products that people are buying, that's when that gets really important, to be able to truly define and to have the public understand what is a real claim and what is not.
Yeah. And there's certainly, there's other questions to be had at the tail end of this conversation, assuming we get all the nomenclature, which is it really intelligent? Or there's the famous, I think it's called the Chinese room thought experiment, where somebody sits inside a room and has a book of instructions on how to respond to Chinese characters. Someone's outside of the room sliding Chinese characters in. Person inside the room doesn't speak Chinese, but they can follow the instructions and convince the person outside that they do. Is that what's going on with computers? They're just following a set of instructions, essentially. Maybe they've created some of these instructions themselves, but it's at the end a set of instructions, and they don't have awareness. And if that's the case, if they don't have awareness, do we need to pay attention? Do we need to worry, like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking and others are telling us, that this is, our own demise if we are not careful with AI? Are we all going to die from AI? That's my question.
I'm not too worried about it, at least not at this point.
Until
we start programming bots to rage against the machine being the human race, I'm not super worried. Maybe I'm naive, but
we're pretty sure that Roger Chang is not an AI, and he's playing the music. That means we have hit the end of our last topic here. So big thank you to everybody for watching or listening, and let us know what you think of our first roundtable show. We want to do this every month. If we hit the next level on Patreon, we'll do it more than once a month, but we want to make it in a way that's enjoyable and educational and adds something to the regular DTNS. Round the horn. First of all, thank you, Erin Carson, for joining us. A pleasure as always.
Thank you.
If you want to find more Erin Carson, where should people go?
Cena.com. That's where I spend my time.
All right. And Shannon Morse, where should people find more of what you've got going on?
Hi, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Snubs, SNUBS, and I'm just about to give away a free NES Classic on TechThing. So if you haven't already, go to youtube.com/TechThing to find out about that.
Thank you, Shannon, and a pleasure as always, even without giveaways. Just even better. Len Peralta has been sitting here this entire time working furiously on his latest piece of art to encapsulate our discussions. Len, what do you got?
Oh, one of the things I love about DTNS is that you always challenge me, and today's image was definitely a challenge, trying to get all four topics, if I could, into it. And hopefully I did it. I was looking over here at the last second. Obviously, the 4 topics talked about automation, talked about AI, talked about Amazon, and of course, women in tech. And this image sort of covers all of them, I think.
You tried to take on all 4 topics? You're a madman.
I tried to take on all 4. I don't know if I'll be able to do it every single time, but hey, it's the best I can do. And we'll see how it goes. The image is up at my online store, lenperaltastore.com.
It's so great. I love it.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
I also like how, sometimes I see sort of the wireframe version before a lot of detail has been added, and it's really come to life.
Oh, well, thank you. That's the magic. You get to watch it as it's happening. Yeah, so you can actually get this. Hopefully, there will be more of these DTNS roundtables. I think it'd be pretty awesome. And also, I am up for the challenge, so we'll see what happens. And I also wanted to mention 10 more spots for the DTNS Last Jedi poster. So if you want to get onto that, go over to my online store and help sell that out so we can get those printed and get people out, get it out.
10 left. The window is closing.
The window is
your name in the credits, people.
Yes.
Get it.
Go check it out, lenperaltastore.com. And again, the only reason we do this show is because we are supported by you, our patrons, at patreon.com/DTNS. We hit a brand new goal at the beginning of this month that brought Sarah Lane on the show. It brought DTNS Labs, which will have a new episode on Saturday with Andrew Allen. Patrons get that early. You've already got it in your feed at Patreon, talking about kickstarting music. And this is the other piece of the puzzle, the roundtable episode once a month on the final Friday of the month. If you like this and you want more of it, that's our next milestone. If we get to 22K, we'll actually do 2 of these roundtables a month. So in any case, thank you to everyone who supports us at patreon.com/DTNS.
Well, I, for one, really enjoyed this Friday roundtable, and I hope everybody else did too. We would love to hear your feedback, though. Please. I'm not joking when I say email us. Feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com is our email address. We are live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv if you want to follow along live. And, of course, our website to catch up with anything you might have missed or revisit it again is dailytechnewsshow.com.
We'll be back on Monday with Veronica Belmont, I think. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Hooray.
Yeah, there's no name in the guests, but I assume it's Veronica.
Yeah, it's not in there?
I just see a gray box.
Oh, what happened?
It's probably her.
No, it is. And I put Veronica and it didn't, Monkey's uncle. What happened there?
Darn monkey.
Oh, I didn't click out of the box.
Ah, there it is. No, it's there now. Well, I must be crazy.
because I didn't click out of the box.
You didn't hit the enter button.
Square.
I've done that on Google spreadsheets so many times where I'm like, it's there, I wrote it.
Oh, was I supposed to play Andrew Allen out instead of the...
Oh, I didn't even think about that. No,
because I didn't hear any music, so I thought, supposed to play this.
You didn't hear music? Oh, under Sarah. I just had it really low. Yeah,
I heard it.
Yeah.
How come everyone can hear those things? I don't... whatever.
Who knows? Well, Erin and Shannon, thank you guys so much. I personally thought this was great. I thought it was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. I like getting deep into topics and having like several different people kind of give some input. It gives us kind of a nice like debate feature, but not like an angry debate, which I really appreciate.
Me too. And I also think that, especially because we're all used to, sort of talking in sound bites, and you have to do that if you're trying to keep something to a condensed format. And we just had more room to breathe.
Yeah.
So, for me to be like, gosh, can we talk about this for 15 minutes? It's like, yeah, we can actually. Once you, stop kind of like forcing yourself to just say something really succinctly and move on, you end up having some, really interesting dialogue.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that it's the right number of people involved.
Mhm.
Like there was enough variety of commentary, but it also wasn't like we're rushing to get everyone time to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really loved the music element of this.
Oh yeah, that was great.
It was so
it was good.
It's like, okay, well, we can go on and on and on, but at some point it's just a nice like reminder of like, we've been doing this for 15 minutes. It's time to, move to the next topic. Worked out really well.
It always felt natural. Like, okay, we're kind of at an end point. That's great, but it wasn't so disruptive that we're like, oh, I got jarred out of a conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. It's like it wasn't sort of an aggressive intrusion into the conversation. So
the hardest part, I think, is trying to figure out, has the topic been exhausted or is there more to say? Because you could wrap up before the 15 minutes. So.
Well, like Sarah was saying, every time we were about 5 minutes into a conversation, I started to feel like, oh, do we have enough? Because that's the normal length we have on a normal show. But then I would forget, and the next thing I know, the music's playing. I'm like, oh, wow, we totally hit it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's just nice. It's nice to be able to go back and forth a little bit. And these were really good topics, even revisiting AI kind of at the top of the show and at the end, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
Felt like, it was still two different conversations. And that's cool too, because it's a vast thing to tackle.
Sorry, I'm going to take off my coat. I know I don't usually do that, but it's warm.
I feel like you're allowed to do that.
Oh, and it's Hat Friday still. And I because we were doing a roundtable, I wore an old ZDTV roundtable shows hat.
That's awesome.
Because in just a few short hours, it's Game 3 of the World Series. I'm wearing my San Francisco Giants hat.
Wait, they're not in the World
Who's
Series.
playing?
Of course,
San Francisco Giants?
No, the LA Dodgers.
LA Dodgers are playing the Houston Astros, so I am passive aggressively showing my support.
I did notice the Astros colors are orange and black.
Oh, yeah. like I'm dressed up.
Look at you, Len.
Yeah, a Reese's cup.
Reese's?
A Reese's cup.
Erin, I don't even know if you follow baseball, but is it Reds fans around you?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think Louisville has the Bats.
Yeah.
And that's like our minor league, and I think that they it's like a feeder team for the Reds.
Right. Okay.
I am repeating things people have said to me.
You're like an AI.
It's creepy, right?
You're doing a great
job. Are we pulling titles the same way we normally do?
You know what? I kind of want to do. Let's see. What do I got in here? I have Roundtable: Automation, Amazon, Diversity, and AI. I kind of feel like it's a good.
That's a good title.
The way to go on the first one is just give it more descriptive. But let's hear what people were suggesting, because it's always fun.
I enjoy ditch digging. Shut up, Tom. DTNS : Roundtable. Tom, shut up. Shannon brought one so you don't have to. I heard you like cameras.
Did anybody tell Tom to shut up?
I did. I told myself.
Oh, okay. Got it.
This table is round. Sarah's cats are cute. Even Tom has a brain fart every now and then. Hype to reality ratio. AI is getting 4G'd. King Merritt and the 5 podcasters of the Roundtable. I lost my job to a computer. Echo Deadbolt's live. Have a camera on the camera. Amazontopia. Amazon intrusion. Invasion of the Amazons. World according to Amazon. Amazon's cloud is bigger than the mom and pop clouds. FFF, Final Friday Forum, Tales from the Tech World, and Texts of the Roundtable.
I like Final Friday Forum as a...
it just occurred to me, my child will probably know Amazon first as a large retail shipping operation before she understands it's a geographic region in Latin America, South America.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That is a good point. Right. It's like
it's where
did that word come from? Well,
so they named the river after the company.
Nobody in Seattle made it up.
That's crazy.
They named one with 1 million zeros after the search engine?
It's not even spelled the same way, but yeah.
They misspelled it.
All right, I'm gonna start my weekend. Woo!
All right, man. Yeah. What do you got going on in your weekend?
Let me think.
Peanut butter cups.
No, yeah. Well, we have a Halloween party tomorrow. Tomorrow's my daughter's birthday. Sunday's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday! I didn't know you.
Happy birthday early.
Thank you. And so we're just gonna be celebrating, trying to.
Are you still a Libra at this point, or have you crossed into Scorpio?
I am a Scorpio.
You are
Scorpio.
You're like a shoulder Scorpio, I guess.
I'm
right
you
on.
Knew he was.
Are you on the cusp?
Put him on your shoulder.
Are you on the cusp
The
of
cusp,
both?
I guess, is what I meant by
because
shoulder.
I am on the cusp of both Sagittarius and Scorpio, according to which zodiac book, like the 22nd of November. Huh. It's like on the nose.
I
for
thought
both.
I was pretty much in Scorpio, but
so I am half man, half Scorpion.
Because it's close to the end of the month.
My mom's a Scorpio. She's November 16th. So.
So I might just be starting. Yeah, Shannon, are you a Scorpio?
I am the 18th. I'm a full-on Scorpio.
Wow. Oh,
I am actually a double Scorpio according to my star chart or whatever.
What is
called.
that? You get two of them or something? You get like a 2-for-1?
That means my personality is like dead on Scorpio. I don't know. Some hippie stuff.
I know. I'm a Libra. My birthday was a couple weeks ago, and it's represented by scales, right?
Yeah.
So, and people who pay more attention to this than I do are always saying like, are you always seeking balance in life? And I'm like, yeah, unlike everyone else.
And then you trip.
I'm just really trying to balance stuff out. Very unique to October people.
I have to listen to my Scorpio song. What are you, Erin? Are you?
I'm a Gemini.
Gemini.
I think so. June 1st.
The twin thing. Whatever that.
My husband's a Gemini too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go through this thing where I look up what that means like once a year or something, and then just immediately forget it.
Yep. That's kind of the depth of my.
I always remembered Scorpio because I remember reading it as a child and thinking you're very hot tempered, and I'm like, am I?
Yeah, you're not.
You don't.
I mean, maybe you are outside of
it all. Not on this show anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
You just go downstairs and rant at Nora once you're done.
Get dinner ready.
No. Well, happy birthday, Len.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, and happy birthday to your little kid too.
Yes, she's not a little kid. She'll be 17 tomorrow.
Oh,
she's not a little kid, Sarah.
She's little. She's a little
well,
kid.
she
is a little. Well,
as a non-voting child.
Yes.
Happy birthday to her.
She's still a baby to me. So.
She'll always be.
Well, no, wait. She's 17 now, so she's turning 18.
No, she's going to be 17 tomorrow.
Oh,
okay.
And then she also shares a birthday with my dad, that's just another thing entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Sam and I were talking about it at the time.
Oh yeah.
so it's a very emotional type of week.
We're back to the depressing conversation Len and I were having off air before anyone else joined the hangout.
Old man talk.
Yes, old man talk.
Well, have a great weekend, Len.
Right,
and awesome art. Everybody go check it out. LenPeraltaStore.com.
Thank you.
Great.
And 9 more slots left, by the way. We just sold one.
Oh, only 9. Hurry.
Nice.
9, hurry.
Get your name on there.
Yes. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye, Len.
Bye, Len.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I forgot my camera's on.
Well,
Keep that.
we have kept everyone longer than we normally do. And it takes a little longer to export an hour-long file. It takes about twice as long as a half-hour file. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a lovely weekend. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. See you Monday. Talk to you then.
Break for animals.